Hello.
Hello, Dr. Calleman. It's Andrew Fisher again. Glad to be speaking to you over Skype. Pleasure to be speaking to you, and it's a privilege too. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm
Great.
looking forward to this.
I very much am too. I was a big fan of your work. I watched that masterpiece presentation that the late Ian Zell-Lungle did that was based on your work. Well, he did a couple of presentations. There's one on the UFO TV, the Disclosure Network channel, but that's basically like a 3 hour bridge version. I think there's a much more enhanced version that's like 3 or 4 parts. That's like 5 or 6 hours
Hmm.
long. I definitely recommend people watch that one instead. Not
Yeah,
sure exactly what channel
yeah,
that's on, but yeah, Ian Zell-Lungold, he is no longer with us, but he did carry on your legacy pretty well in that presentation.
yes.
And a lot of stuff in that presentation, definitely not for the faint of heart. Definitely not stuff mainstream science would, or mainstream history or mainstream media will definitely consider talking about. But there is definitely seems to be some truth to it. So I do often give many people the chance to tell their life story on my show. I don't really know if that's really necessary with you, but I really think it may be a good idea for you to tell, well, some bits and pieces of what happened in your life
Yeah.
that caused you to realize that the Mayan calendar, the way that we know it, and everything dealing with it in consciousness is not. It's like the whole 2012 December 21st thing was kind of. I mean, I believe there's definitely something to it, and I'll give you my take as to why I believe that. But it was kind of, in many ways, overblown, and you believe that too. You believe there were other things about it
Yeah.
that people should take
Mm.
into consideration, and I'll give you the chance to explain that. But I guess what happened to you in your life specifically that made you realize, okay, there's much more to it than what like the mainstream Mayan scholars are telling us. How did you come to
Hmm.
realize there's more to the story than that?
Hmm.
You got the
Oh,
floor.
so okay, I got the floor. Okay. Well, I guess it's a long story, and most profoundly, I think I was really born with this as a mission. Somehow coming back to this world at this time, and in order to be able to present the ancient Mayan calendar to modern people in such a way that it makes sense and that it's meaningful and where you see that this is really the big picture of things. Um, and now, even though I might have been born with that kind of a mission, it took some time until it caught up with me, so to speak, which is not very surprising because I was born and raised in Sweden, and I started out as a um, scientist in the hard sciences, working mostly with cancer research, with the chemistry and biology and these kind of things. But at one point, when I was 29 years old, I saw at the University of Stockholm, where I was a graduate student at the time, I saw this little note saying that you could go to Mexico and stay with a Mexican family and learn a little bit of Spanish. And somehow that really pulled me. It really spoke to me somehow, and I definitely felt that
What's up?
I needed to go, and I had to get my vacation time in an unusual time of the year. And nonetheless, I did go, and that trip was really a game changer for myself. Once there, I just realized how strongly I felt for this nation and its native population and all of its traditions. And especially then when I started to go down to the land of the Maya, then I really felt at home and felt like this is really where the purpose of my life will have to be fulfilled. And that's how it all started. At that time, I went there and I read as much as I could, and I did read Michael Coe, who is sort of a typical academical student of the Maya and the Mayan calendar. His book, The Maya, has influenced me and many others. And he, at that time, which is let's see, 79, that's to 2011, that's 31, that's 42 years ahead of time. He wrote that the Mayan calendar would end in 2011, and suggested that could be meaningful, and somehow that really hit me. And I also then got acquainted with the kind of calendar that the contemporary Maya were still using. The whole idea that periods of time could be associated with spiritual qualities and symbols like animals or other things. That idea was quite remarkable to me at the time. It told me that they really had a completely different view of time, one which wasn't just based on measuring time, not just based on quantitative time, but actually time as shifting worlds, shifting eras that somehow were distinct and defined by these time periods that the Maya built their calendar on. So that's really how my connection to the Mayan calendar started. Then it took another 13 years probably until I made it my own, my full-time profession to deal with the Mayan calendar, to try to make sense of it, write books, give talks, give lectures and courses, etc., etc. And I've essentially been doing that ever since. And I think my last book here, The 9 Ways of Creation, I think that's the 6th book that I've published on this particular topic. And so here we are at this point in time in 2017.
Thank you. That's a nice little intro there. And I guess the best way to go about this is to, well, go about it as a timeline. And I'm not sure how long it may take us in this interview to do this. We got a full 2 hours to work with, so let's make the most of this. And I'd like to maybe start from the beginning. The time wave that, the timeliners, I should say, that you focus on, that the Mayans allegedly focused on, began about 16.4 billion years ago. Now, there's a couple of things to note about that time period. First of all, mainstream scientists assert that the Big Bang happened about 13.7 billion years ago. Ian Zell-Lungold said that they're probably off a little bit, and he said, I predict that maybe in a couple decades or so, people will realize that Johan Calleman's 16.4 billion year marking is more accurate. Well, is it? I mean, I've heard many people say, like David Icke, for example, in his book, The Perception Deception, there's a subchapter called Big Bang Bullocks, bullocks being a British euphemism for bullshit. He asserts that there was no Big Bang. Lots of people, even John Lear has asserted when I interviewed him, there was no Big Bang. Everything is infinite consciousness. There is no beginning. There is no end. There is no infinite. So there was no Big Bang to talk about. It's just a mainstream science lie that the powers that be have put in to keep us in the dark about how the nature of reality actually works. And if that's true, then the claim that a Big Bang happened 13.7 or 16.4 billion, whenever, cannot possibly be true. Now, I will say, though, that when I interviewed Daniel Scranton, when he was channeling one of his higher dimensional entities that he communicates with, one of the questions I did ask was, what did happen 16.4 billion years ago? And I must say, I unfortunately, even though as good a memory as I may have, I don't remember everything. My memory is maybe 50% photographic, 50% selective. It doesn't remember everything, and I don't remember exactly what he said. said, but I hypothesized, could it perhaps be like a timeline incursion? Because Andrew Bartzis, the Akashic Records reader, has said about 54 million years ago from now, there was a massive timeline genocide, a timeline incursion of sorts, where lots of karma was created. And I was thinking maybe a similar thing happened 16.4 billion years ago. But I do not personally subscribe to the Big Bang. And like I said, I don't remember exactly what Daniel Scranton said, but anybody that wants to check out my interview with him to see what that higher level consciousness entity said happened 16.4 billion years ago, be my guest. It's up on my channel. But what, from your research, do you think probably was the significance of the starting point about 16.4 billion years ago? Was it a Big Bang or something entirely different?
Well, I think it was a starting point. Now, if you want to call that a Big Bang or not, that's another question. And because maybe it wasn't big and maybe it wasn't a bang either, but certainly no one was there to listen and there was no sound. So it really is a misnomer to begin with. That doesn't mean that it wasn't a starting point. And I think, I'm just basing myself on the views of science in this particular case. And I don't know really how somebody like Ike argues in this case, but there are two lines of evidence that point to a starting point. And one of them is the fact that the universe is expanding and that the galaxies are distancing themselves from each other all the time. And what that means is that based on the current situation in the universe, you can back calculate and come to a point in time where this expansion must have started. Similarly, there is something called the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is really then a light that comes from a very early point in the history of the universe, and this particular light, its temperature has been decreasing ever since the beginning of this radiation, and so it's now down to something like 2 Kelvin or 2 degrees above the absolute zero in temperatures. And from that, you can also back calculate to a time in the past when everything was at a much higher temperature. And so these two ways of back calculating actually corroborate each other. And so I would say that, yes, there was absolutely a starting point for the evolution of the universe. Call it Big Bang or not, I don't think that's the best word, and I don't think anybody today really think it's the best word. But yes, there was a starting point, and it doesn't fit perfectly with the one that the Maya would have given, which is 16.4 billion years. But these even so, I mean, it's a small difference from the currently popular value of 13.8 billion years, and it's hard to do, when you start thinking about it, how should you actually measure that point in time the most exactly you can, and you find that it's quite a difficult thing, and the exact value that you come up with will depend on the kind of mathematical models that you're using to this. And these mathematical models are quite in dispute, and there's still quite some discussion going on in the scientific community as to what exactly this starting point meant, and how did it go from being a starting point to being some kind of a structured reality that began to form galaxies, stars, planets, life, etc., etc. So I definitely believe there was a starting point, and it seems clear that the ancient Maya believed that too, and that's definitely the view of modern science as well.
Thank you. I don't really want to get into too much of a debate about the cosmic microwave background radiation that you mentioned, but it's interesting how some people that say, well, there had to have been a Big Bang because there were these people, Arnio Penzas and Robert Wilson at Princeton, who discovered the cosmic microwave background radiation. They thought it was static caused by bird shit originally, but it was actually but then they realized no, it's actually a fingerprint of the birth of the universe. Well, the interesting thing is I've read that many times, but in all the sources I've read that, they never actually provide a single shred of evidence to show that that was proof that was actually something from the Big Bang. They basically just say, well, that's from the Big Bang because we say so, and if you don't believe it, you're a crackpot. They don't provide any evidence for that. So I just want to throw that out there for maybe, hey, if the Big Bang believers want to assert that that is proof that it's a Big Bang, well, can you please show me some evidence that what Arnio Penzas and Robert Wilson found really was from the Big Bang? Because all the sources, they don't seem to show that. They just say, well, take our word for it or else. So we'll just leave it at that. I do want to talk about, though, what the 9 waves of creation is all about, and I'll give you the floor to talk about this in great detail, but a couple things I want to point out that I'm looking here on your website. It says here, he describes how prior to the activation of the 6th wave at 3115 BCE. Now that's interesting because the Mayan calendar, the final age, it was said that August 11th or August 13th, so the dates have been different. 3114 BC, I believe, is the date they give. And I remember a National Geographic documentary saying that there was evidence for a pole shift around that time. And in an episode of Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, they talked about how the Chilambalam books, the book of the Jaguar priests, say that a series of Road to the Stars descended from the sky. Talks about evidence of extraterrestrials came to Earth on that day, August 11th, August 13th, 3114 BC. So I don't know why there's a difference of a year based on what you say and they say, but I'm thinking, well, there must be some correlation there. So was there a pole shift, and were there extraterrestrials coming to Earth, or was it a combination of both? That's the first thing coming out that I want to point out. And then the I don't think I should say anymore because I'm going to babble on and on. I got some questions, but I'll give you the chance to talk about this. What are the 9 waves of creation? You got the floor. We got 2 hours. Take as much time as you need to talk about this. Don't go into as much detail as Ian Zellungle did because that's going to take forever. But please give us a nice, detailed, abridged version of what the 9 waves of creation is all about, how it works, how each cycle is shorter than the last cycle, and how it all boils down to everything on, as you assert, October 28th, 2011.
Yeah, well, my view of the Big Bang, I have to come back to that, is really quite different from the standard view. My view is basically that what happened is that the tree of life was activated, and as a result of that, we had this expansion of the universe, this extreme temperatures and so forth. The tree of life activated some kind of energy field that at that point, at the beginning of the first of the 9 waves of creation. And the first of the 9 waves of creation started 16.4 billion years ago. And then on top of that, other waves have been activated and continued and developed certain aspects of the universe. Each wave has a specific aspect that it develops. And the second wave then was activated in 820 million years ago. And it didn't just create galaxies and planets and so forth, but it actually started the creation of animals, living organisms. And the third one started 41 million years ago, and it starts with the first monkeys coming into existence. And the fourth one starts 2,050,000 years ago, and it starts with the first humans coming into existence, the Homo habilis. The oldest version of the species Homo emerges at this point in time. And then comes a number of waves on top of that influence the human beings in other ways than just physically or biologically. The higher waves, the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth, they tend to have an effect on the mental, spiritual abilities of the human beings. And so the fifth wave starts about 100,000 years ago, and that's the one that brings some kind of a appreciation among these hominids of the existence of spiritual phenomena. And then comes the sixth wave that started 5,130 years ago, which is the one you were just talking about. It started 3,115 BC. I should say that neither the Maya doesn't say that extraterrestrials would come or that there was a pole shift. They said something quite different, and it's a very critical thing what they actually said about it. You can say that it was a pole shift if you understand polarity shift in the way that I do, in terms of spiritual polarity shift. But it wasn't a pole shift in the electromagnetic sense. There's no proof that happened at the time, and the Maya did not say that would happen. The good thing about studying the Mayan calendar in some ways is that there actually are some inscriptions from ancient times that are quite specific and can tell us something about these things. But anyway, the sixth wave then really is like the downloading of the human mind that comes with the activation of that particular wave, and that creates civilizations. Human civilizations are created essentially by the sixth wave. And the seventh wave then started 1755, and it really gives rise to industrialism, and many other things will come with that wave. The eighth wave is the digital revolution, essentially started in 1999. And the highest wave, the ninth wave, started in 2011, March 9th, 2011. And the ninth wave is a wave whose function it is to bring humanity back to a kind of unity consciousness, an experience of unity with all things that actually happened before the mind was downloaded. And at the current time, all of these waves are running in parallel. For the first time in human history, as of March 9th, 2011, all the waves of creation are active. And we as human beings, we're in resonance with all of these waves, but we may also tune into particular waves, and that will have an effect. I should say then next about these nine waves that they each have a frequency of their own. In other words, they are sine waves, and so that there will be a peak phase, and then there will be a valley phase. And in the first wave, one such wave period of combining a peak and a valley would be 2.6 billion years. In the next wave, it will be 120, almost 130 million years. And it goes on like that, so that with every new wave being activated, there will be an increase in frequency. The wave period will be decreased by a factor 20. And at the same time, the frequency of the particular wave will be increased by a factor of 20. So the wave that was activated most recently, the ninth wave, that's the highest frequency of all of these waves of creation. And these 9 waves, they are symbolized in a very particular way among the ancient Maya. They would build these pyramids that were built in 9 levels. The most important of the pyramids that the Maya would build, like the pyramid of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, the pyramid of the Great Jaguar in Tikal, and the Temple of Inscriptions in Palenque. Each of these were built in 9 levels. And you might say that the Mayan shaman kings that ruled these particular cities, they would enact divine creation by climbing these pyramids and step by step going through the activation, you might say, symbolically speaking, going through the activations of higher and higher waves of creation until they ended up in a little house on the top of the 9th wave of the pyramid. And so they would, by doing these kind of ceremonies at the top of the pyramid and climbing the pyramid, they were telling people that this is our path. This is the path of human beings in this particular universe. And being rulers, they would also be telling people that they somehow were at the top of the pyramid, more of a political message, you might say. But they're all running in parallel today, but they're also building on top of each other. In other words, the creation of animals, for instance, is based on, which comes with the second wave, is based on the creation of singular cells on the first wave. You can't come to this, to having animals without going through the steps of singular cells. And it's so with everything that step by step through this climb, they're built on each other. It looks like a sort of a thought out scheme where everything comes into existence at the right time, when the foundation exists of what's needed for a new phenomenon to come into existence. But then that new phenomenon in turn will create the foundation for something else on a higher level to come into existence. And so this is in short terms how it all works. Then you might also add that these 9 waves, they are creating like interference patterns, and that's what's behind the enormous complexity of our cosmic reality. There's an endless amount of different interference patterns that can be created through these different waves. So now, of course, if these waves are what is creating our universe, and it's not only creating it biologically speaking or physically speaking, but it's also then actually creating the way people think. It creates the kind of phenomena that human beings are creating, whether you're talking about the ancient pyramids or you're talking about the modern day digital smartphones. They all come out of these different waves. Ultimately, they come, even though they sort of the human being is a mediator of the waves, because we're downloading the waves, we're tuning into the waves through resonance, and what that means is that everything, not only what we refer to as nature, but also what we refer to as culture, actually are creations of these 9 waves of creation. And what that means in turn is that if this kind of a scheme, temporal scheme, which is what the Mayan calendar was about, if that can be applied to reality, then this kind of a calendrical system describing these different waves can really be useful in order to certainly explain our past, but also in explaining or prophesying or predicting in some general terms anyway as to what is to come, because creativity is really ultimately a function of these different waves.
Thank you. Very enlightening, very interesting to say the least. And let's jump right to the end of it all. Well, what you claim was sort of the end of it all. Well, you've kind of retracted that, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But October 28th, 2011, the significance behind that date. Couple of people did say a few things about this. George Kavasilis, in a presentation he gave on the March equinox in 2011, he also said that date symbolizes the end of a cycle. And when I interviewed him, I asked him what happened on that day. He said on that day, many, many timelines came together at a rate that never before happened. And of course, Ian Zell-Lungold, in his presentation that he gave, he said that was the day that everything that has ever happened and did happen in the past, it happened in all the cycles, happens all at once at one time. And everybody in the audience was like, what? What's that mean? And he was like, well, I'm sorry, that's the only way I can explain it. And however, I also want to point out that Alfred Weber, he's said that he interviewed a few people talking about how on that date, the cosmic fluctuations of the masculine and feminine energy emanating from the center of the galaxy reached a state of equilibrium. And George Kavasilis also asserted, yeah, that is another significant thing that happened on that day. And you know what else happened on that day? I remember this pretty well because, well, I used to be a pretty big sports fan. That was the day in 2011, in October, the St. Louis Cardinals won the World Series, and that was pretty devastating for me because I used to be a Phillies fan at that point. And that division series where the Cardinals beat the Phillies, that was like one of the worst losses in the history of Philadelphia sports. And that World Series where the Cardinals beat the Texas Rangers, it was like a World Series to remember. I didn't watch it, but I heard a lot about it. Like the Cardinals made several rallies that were like never before seen in the history of sports. Like you thought they were done, you thought the Rangers were going to win, and then the rally, like down to the last out, the Cardinals managed to tie the game and then eventually win it. And you know, I can't help but wonder, is it possible that, like, if you had to pinpoint the exact time on October 28th, 2011, when that end point actually happened, do you think it would have to be that the exact moment the Cardinals won the World Series, because at that exact moment, that's when everybody around the world would have been like, oh my God, the underdogs of the ages actually won. The team you never thought would win won. And so I'm just
Yeah.
hypothesizing maybe that would be the exact moment. Do you think maybe that makes sense, or am I going nuts here?
Well, no, I can't. I can't answer. But yeah, I mean, I do think it might have affected. There might have been an effect on that particular game, but unless somebody actually predicted this as a function of the shift in the Mayan calendar, who it really doesn't. Then it doesn't have a lot of evidence value, so to speak. But who knows? I mean, I do think everything is really affected by these particular shifts, and maybe a football game might really have been affected as well.
Okay, well, what about those other things I said, like about the male and female energies from the center of the galaxy reaching a state of equilibrium, and many timelines coming together? Like, that's another way of saying everything that has ever happened happens all at once. Like Ian Zellungold said, that's another way of saying many timelines came together on that day. Does that all make sense to you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that description of many timelines coming together is quite accurate. To begin with, I think I never emphasized this particular date. The Mayan calendar, as I started to describe these different waves, they start with some waves that have a wave periods of 2.5 billion years, and then when you come to the sixth wave, which is the one most people paid attention to, the long count, then the wave period is about 800 years, and so a particular date is significant because it does bring some kind of a shift, but it doesn't mean that everything will happen on any particular singular date. And I think that's somewhat misleading to think so. What I would say instead is that the shift that happened on this date, and it was an enormous shift actually on the quantum level, on the level underneath what is happening in our manifest physical reality. But on the quantum level, in terms of the waves, it was a tremendously important shift. And really what happened was that all of these 9 waves simultaneously went from being in their peak phases to being in their valley phases. And we're now, I think, since a couple of years, I would say since 2014, we are experiencing a quite dramatic change, I think, in the world, especially in world politics, and especially Western world politics, I would say. And these changes, they come from this shift, but they're long term. And the answers are not completely easy because there are several different waves that are all affecting how human beings act and think in this particular situation. And it also depends on to what extent people, which waves are people resonating with at this point in time. But certainly that was sort of a starting point for a new, not a new cycle. I don't think that's the right word to use, but a starting point for a new interference pattern. And the world will never go back, so to speak. They never, and what these waves actually do is why things have time seems to have a direction, why things never go backwards. It's because creation is based on these particular waves, and these waves have a direction, they have a movement forward. And so I do, there certainly were things happening at this particular point in time. Also, when you look at the physical material reality, but not crazily important things at that particular date. And I think it's important whenever you talk about the Mayan calendar is that you realize that it's not about singular dates. Some of the waves are hundreds of years, if not billions of years. We don't have to go into those because they bring change on such a slow rate. But even the one with a 400 year wave period, that really does influence human beings. But that tells us something, that one day in a wave of maybe 400 years, that's not very much. Things got really I think when it comes to, especially when you talk about the date that most people talked about, the December 21, 2012, when absolutely nothing happened. And that was to be expected, and all of us said that nothing would happen to it on that particular day. I didn't say that anything, I didn't make any particular prediction for the October 28, 2011 date either. But the whole discussion about December 21, 2012 was so much wrong, I would say, that people came to believe that on a particular date everything was changed. These people who was behind these kind of interpretations, they didn't look upon the long perspective of the Mayan calendar. They were just saying that this particular date everything would change, and that's their theoretical basis for doing so was very, very weak. And to some extent, I think their thinking spilled over into the much more serious discussions that pertain to the date October 21, 2011. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll get to December 21st, 2012 in a moment, but one thing I do want to address, I do seem to recall Ian Zell-Lungold saying in his presentations based on your work, he did say something about how the shift in consciousness on Earth could potentially cause the Earth to start spinning in the opposite direction. And he wasn't the first one who said that. Now, David Icke, he in more recent times was saying, 2012 is so overblown, people are making a big stink out of it. Well, that wasn't always the case. Back in 1999, I think it was, he gave a presentation called The Freedom Road, where at the end of that presentation, he also hypothesized that by the Mayan calendar end date of December 21st, 2012, there would be a great consciousness shift, which would also, as he said, result in the Earth spinning in the opposite direction. And anyone who's ever watched Greg Braden's presentation, I believe it was called Zero Point or Time Wave Zero or something like that, where he also hypothesizes, among other things, that the Earth would start spinning in the opposite, rotating in the opposite direction by the 2012 end date. Well, the Earth never started spinning in the opposite direction. No. So I need to ask, do you by any chance know why were Lungold, Icke, and Braden all wrong in that prediction?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that want to make themselves interesting, and Ian wasn't freed from that, I can say. He was a fantastic guy, very fascinating and very entertaining to listen to, and overall he gave a good presentation of my understanding of the Mayan calendar. But he would also, sometimes he would go out being a little bit more of a wild and but I would say these are just made up things, and what you might call some kind of broadly speak about New Age science or something like that, where a lot of things are just made up based on nothing. And I think the person that's looking for the truth will have to be prepared for that and be really check out. Are these guys talking? Are what they're saying? Are they basing themselves on some real facts, or is it just made up? And in this case, it was just made up.
Okay, fair enough. Just made up. Well, okay. That being said, I'm sorry, but I must beg to differ when you say nothing happened on December 21st, 2012. Let me give you a couple sources that would also beg to differ. Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis. He said that was the first time, that date was the first time in history when all of humanity got to experience unity consciousness, or some form of unity consciousness. And what does he mean by that? Universal dream time, excuse me. Universal dream time is the phrase I meant to say. Universal dream time, where what happened during universal dream time, we weren't consciously aware it was happening, but our souls would have been aware of it like in the spiritual world, where we basically got to decide, are we going to move on in our consciousness rising and wake up, or are we going to be sheeple and just give in to a system of domination and control? And Bartis had said that we also have been going through universal dream time, I believe every solstice, equinox, and I think every full lunar and solar eclipse, I think as well. I could be wrong, but I know it's at least every solstice and equinox after December 21st, 2012, that's been happening. Andromeda Council contactee Tolek, he said on that day that, and this isn't him talking, this is his Andromeda ET contacts talking, they told him that the galactic alignment of the Earth, the Sun, and the center of the galaxy on that day, that caused the massive amounts of energy to hit the center of the Earth, the Earth's core, and it caused the Earth's core to blossom into a fourth dimensional entity. And over the course of X amount of days, weeks, months, years, or whatever, the whole entire Earth would blossom into a fourth dimensional consciousness entity. But the starting point of that was December 21st, 2012, and Jim Self, he, when I talked to him about this, he said, well, yeah, both those people are correct, based on your point of view and all, but the way he sees it, he actually gave a trio of dates, and the first date is not too long after October 20th, 2011. He said on November 11th, 2011, 11/11/11, that was the official starting point, he would say, of Earth's transition into fourth dimensional. He used the word dimensional, not density, dimensional consciousness. And he also said you'll have to check out my interview with him to get all the details. Don't really have time to go into it now. But he said December 11/11/11, 12/12/12, December 12th, 2012, where it was also a significant date where something happened regarding that. And he said that on December 21st, 2012, the Archangel Metatron officially declared that from this point forward, everything that comes to existence on planet Earth will exist in a fourth dimensional consciousness. Now, we still seem to perceive this world as third dimensional in nature because we haven't yet gotten accustomed to, we become so used to what 3D looks like that it's still going to take a little time for us to become accustomed and grow into the fourth dimensional nature. But he did assert that after December 21st, 2012, we did officially become fourth dimensional. Time did cease to exist. Time is officially an illusion at this point, and that does coincide with what some people, some whistleblowers talking, like David Wilcock, for example, talking about how governments looking into the future and like with their time travel technology, when they got to December 21st, 2012, they couldn't see anything past that. Well, why is that? Well, if you were to believe what Jim Self said, it's because that was when we officially got into fourth dimensional consciousness and time ceased to exist. And now, when I interviewed Jim Self about this, I did ask him, well, you think maybe you may want to make it, instead of a trio of dates, a quartet of dates, and add maybe October 28th, 2011 before 11/11/11? And I don't remember what he said, but if anybody wants to check it out, by all means check it out. But hey, I needed to throw this out to you because this does sort of fly in the face of your assertion that nothing happened on December 21st, 2012. So what's your response?
Well, I mean, these are just general. These people believed that December 21 was the actual shift point in the Mayan calendar, and then they made up things that fitted their view of the Mayan calendar. But anything that should be considered real science will have to make predictions about, on some level, what actually will happen. Or actually does happen, and I don't think anything significant happened on that particular date. In the real world, so to speak, that's probably called three-dimensional here. But I don't think anything happened, and the reason is that date was not the right date. That would be my answer.
Okay, fair enough. Although I also want to add, I just went today, coincidentally, I went to my local library, and I asked to get Eric von Daniken's book, Twilight of the Gods, the Mayan Calendar, and the Return of the Extraterrestrials. I'm about to finish his book, History is Wrong, and I'm going to read that book next. One thing that Eric von Daniken asserted, I'm sure he's going to assert in the book, that there is a tablet in Mayan legends. The tablet's kind of hard to decipher because parts of it are chipped off, but von Daniken seems pretty sure that if the tablet had not been chipped off, it would say something to the effect of, on December 21st, 2012, will descend from heaven God Bolonyokte. And Bolonyokte is one of the most misunderstood gods in Mayan mythology. He's associated with a couple things that don't seem to have any correlation with each other. And what's interesting is, I remember an episode of Ancient Aliens, they talked about Bolonyokte. He first came into prominence 900,000 years ago. Well, what's significant about that? Well, according to Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis, the guy who said that on December 21st, 2012, we first experienced universal dreamtime, the Archon control system, the system of domination and control that's controlled by the Archons, the bad guys, the malevolent higher dimensional consciousness entities that keep us in a system enslavement, that has been on the Earth since 900,000 years ago. And when I heard that, I'm thinking, whoa, does this perhaps correlate with Bolonyokte? And if so, how does that correlate with him descending from heaven on December 21st, 2012? Hey, I'm just throwing this out. I'll let you and everybody else connect the dots. Since I brought this to your attention, do you have any comments about it?
Well, yeah, I don't agree with this interpretation, but what you're talking about is the Tortuguero Monument number 6, and it is till this day the only Mayan inscription that deals with this particular shift. And Bolonyokte, Bolonyokte-ku, it means the 9-level God. So this is what I've been talking about. This is what my book is all about. There are 9 levels of creation, 9 waves of creation. And that will, what it says specifically is that Bolonyokte-ku will appear in his full regalia. In other words, all the 9 waves, all the 9 levels. Bolonyokte-ku is a description of the creation process of 9 levels that the Maya would use. And yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I've been saying in this book and many other books as well. The 9 waves will be, the full regalia will be what I've been saying here, that all waves are now active and running in parallel. All waves are running in parallel. That means the full regalia of this entity of divine creation. How you can fit in anything extraterrestrial into that, I don't know, but it fits perfectly with what I've been saying here, and namely that creation is made from 9 waves.
Okay, fair enough. Want to ask you about the work of John Major Jenkins, because John Major Jenkins has written 2 books about the Mayans in 2012. Maya Cosmogenesis 2012, he wrote in 1998, and then the 2012 story, which I did read, he wrote in 2009. Do you think maybe he's onto something when he asserts that the Mayans, they had a myth where a god, a malevolent god known as Seven Macaw, they believed that he would come back in our present time, in this time period. And Jenkins asserted that Seven Macaw, his existence, is the same as the corporation. In our time, the corporation is Seven Macaw, and because the Mayans acknowledge that there is good and the evil that's prominent in our time is the corporation that's trying to destroy the world. And the Mayans, of course, their calendar was all about consciousness. They believed that, well, they also had a myth that 2 fish god brothers, I don't know if this has anything to do with the fish gods like Enlil and Enlil in Sumerian mythology, but I don't know. But anyhow, these fish gods, they battled Seven Macaw, and I believe Jenkins in his book said that our consciousness is basically what is going to be the equivalent of the fish gods battling, the fish brothers battling Seven Macaw, and putting a stop to it. And that's the same as our consciousness in this reality, going to war with the corporation and eventually overpowering it. Do you think John Major Jenkins knows what he's talking about in this regard? And would the Mayans have agreed with his interpretation?
Thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, I should mention, I'm not clear from what you're saying that you may not have noticed that Jenkins passed away.
Oh, when did he die?
It's I think 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I was completely unaware. Hard to believe. Well, may his soul rest in
yeah,
peace.
But no, it's true. It was cancer, and I can't remember the exact date, but it's something like 3 weeks. It's quite recently. Well, I think there is something to it. I wouldn't interpret it exactly like this. The seven Macaw, I would say that's the 7th peak of the 5th wave, the energy of that. It's sort of it's a unity consciousness that existed on the shamanic state of the 5th wave. And what happened then in the Mayan mythology, and I'm sure Jenkins would have written about that, is that the hero twins, Hunahpu and Spalanque, they shot him down. They shot down the 7 Macaw, and they represent the duality of the mind. So to me, this myth that Jenkins was talking about really refers to the activation of the 6th wave, the long count activation, and I think there would be quite some support for such a view. It's a fundamental creation story among the Maya. Now, the shamanic state, the seventh peak of the 5th wave, 7 Macaw, the shamanic state, the all-seeing state that the bird was in, you might say is really similar to the 9th wave. And so in that sense, you might say that the 9th wave may be acting against the corporation or anything that has to do with the duality, which is really what is created by the 6th wave. So, I think you can probably fit his interpretation into my way of looking at it. That the ninth wave, which always brings the kind of unity consciousness, it's sort of in a sense it really brings back the unity that existed in the shamanic state of the fifth wave, and that would have consequences. So let me go back. I mean, there's to the year 2011, and when the ninth wave was first activated on March 9th, 2011, and because people forget very easily, and they say nothing happened in 2011. Well, a tremendous amount of things actually happened in that particular year. That's the year when you had the Arab Spring, when people were just shouting one, we're all one, whether they were in Egypt or in Syria or anything, any other Muslim country or Arabic country, maybe. It's also the time of the Occupy movement, which spread across the world and really was against, you might say, against the corporations' ways of acting in the world. And so you may wonder, and I should add, at the end of the year 2011, after the ninth wave had been activated, Time magazine chose for that year as a person of the year, simply to say that the protester is the person of this year, because this whole year has been dominated by protest against the existing order. And so, when people say nothing happened in 2011, the fifth point of the Mayan calendar, I don't know what they're talking about, because this was really a dramatic year. And what happened was that people were starting to oppose the duality, the injustices, the inequalities that have been created by the lower wave. And the reason they did that was that the ninth wave was activated. And then that allowed some people to tune into a new unity consciousness that allowed them to see reality in a new way. And so yes, you might say this is really against the corporation. I'm not sure if I read that particular text by John Jenkins, but I think he would probably be aligned on this.
Yeah, I did read the 2012 story, but I did not read Maya Cosmogenesis 2012. However, there is something that John Major Jenkins wrote in Maya Cosmogenesis 2012, which I've tried to research it on the internet and such, but there doesn't really seem to be anything about it. It seems like that book that he wrote is the only source that talks about this interesting cosmic coincidence phenomenon, and I want to talk to you about this because, hey, this is one thing that always seems to make for good radio show conversation. Isn't it interesting how the precession of the equinox is 26,000 years, and the distance from the Earth to the center of the Milky Way galaxy is 26,000 light years? Well, John Major Jenkins, in his Maya Cosmogenesis 2012 book, he mentions something about why that's the case, and some website that did briefly mention it, it said it has something to do with the precession of a proton. Like the proton, its precessional time will be equal to its distance from something. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but the point I'm trying to make is the Earth is the equivalent of the proton, and its precession is the same as the proton's precession. And no, it's not an accident that 26,000 light years is the distance, and 26,000 years is the time of the precession. So do you by any chance know, can you perhaps elaborate what Jenkins was talking about? Do you know why this coincidence is for real?
Yeah, I'm not, probably I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think it's that so precisely aligned with these times. I would rather point to this as coincidences. I think it's remarkable that there is in the thousands of calendrical inscriptions that the Maya left behind, there is no inscription that talks about 26,000 years. None. Zero. And that's Jenkins admitted that at the end of his Maya Cosmogenesis 2012. But even though he knew that this was the case, he still went out to sort of propagate this idea of the precession and so forth. But it's not there. It's not there in the Mayan sources. You do find the kind of things I'm talking about, cartoons, which are peaks or valleys in the waves, but you never find this kind of a 26,000 year cycle mentioned among the Maya, and that's just an absolute fact. And so it's again, it's very strange how certain things, somebody says something that seems attractive, and then people don't go deeper and check the facts and see, do the Maya speak about that? No, they don't. But yet this became a view of understanding the Mayan calendar that became quite popular in modern times, even though there was no backing from the ancients. And so you know, I'm not agreeing with him on this point.
Okay, also, before Santos Bonacci became the poster boy for the flat earth theory, which I think is a bunch of bollocks, as they say in the British Isles, he did talk about in his presentations from around 2011 that when he believed the earth was spherical, that the earth does go through another type of precession that lasts 2,160,000 years. Interesting thing, first of all, one age of the zodiac is 2,160 years. Multiply that by 1,000, you get 2,160,000, which is the time of this precession. And this precession is the what this precession is. It's the like, imagine a basketball, like put a needle at the top of the basketball representing like the North Pole. Rotate the basketball around so that the needle goes toward the ground, and then roll the basketball over so like the needle, well, let's imagine the ground doesn't break the needle, but the basketball rolls over, the needle hits the bottom of the ground, like where where it used to be the North Pole, now it's the South Pole, and then the basketball rolls over to where the needle is at the North Pole again. That full rotation where the Earth goes upside down and then right side up again, it takes 2,160,000 years for that to happen. Santos Bonacci, before he became the flat Earth poster boy, asserted that the Earth does go through that type of precession. Do you, by any chance, know anything about that?
No, I don't. And the way I work is always to try to connect things that actually happen among the human beings, especially in their ways of creating, what they create, how they think, and so forth, and how those kind of things, what I call empirical evidence, how that connects to the shift points in the Mayan calendar. That's really how I work. Other people, like this person that you're talking about, may be more interested in making some kind of a mathematical physical calculations, and that fits with some other mathematical physical calculation. But it really doesn't matter to us too much if it doesn't tell us anything about what is happening on our planet and where we come from and so forth. But to answer your question, I'm not familiar with this particular reasoning and really can't contribute anything on it.
Fair enough. So let's move on to another topic. Now, a couple months ago, there was an interesting video on the Event is Coming Soon YouTube channel that talked about your work. The video is called Mayan Calendar Expert Says May 24th, 2017 is more significant than December 21st, 2012. The video was about 9 minutes long. Well, I'm going to give you the chance here to explain in your words what exactly was the significance behind that date. My phone's ringing. Just ignore that sound in the background. May 24th, 2017. What was that all about?
Yeah, it was the starting point of a new peak in the ninth wave. At least if you go to what I said about it, I never said that the May 24th was the only significant point in the ninth wave. There are several others. Like then came June 30th. Now comes August 4th. Then comes, I think, September 9th. I can't remember the date, etc., etc. So this is like, it's more like this is an ongoing wave of creation. And so in order to tune into this, we have to mark those particular beginning points of new wave periods in the ninth wave, because that's when whenever such a peak begins is when the particular purpose of the ninth wave will be manifested especially during the coming 18 days. So these are shift points on the quantum level, on the underneath. But increasing amount of people are experiencing who are following this and checking it out. This is not something you do once and then stop it. It's something you follow all the time, and the more familiar you will be getting of not only what the ninth wave means to the collective humanity, but also what it means to you and yourself and your own life. And in order to do so, you will have to follow these peaks and then see how there is a turn and follow the next valley in the sine wave movement, and then comes another peak and so forth. And at least if you ask me, May 24th was more important than December 21, 2012, which wasn't important at all. But it wasn't that the May 24th date was uniquely important. It was important as part of the ninth wave, and it's just one of the dates that is important to be aware of for those that have the focus of being part of the destiny of humanity, for those that really wonder how they can use their own lives in order to go towards the unity consciousness of the ninth wave. So that's that, and it did happen so that on this particular May 24th, there was an event where the Bushmen in South Africa had a dance in order to celebrate this particular shift point, and we did what we could to sort of alert people to and give them a chance to be part of this and do it in their own way as well. If we are to align ourselves with the ninth wave, we will have to be aware of what frequency it is. It is like, it's like you might say that when this ninth wave was activated in 2011, and that's really what the inscription of the Tortuguero says. In other words, the Bolonyokte Ku appears in its full regalia. The 9-level divinity appears in its full regalia. That's if we want to be part of that, if we want to manifest that, first of all, we have to be aware that this full regalia meant that a new frequency started to be sent out throughout the cosmos. That's the first thing, and most people have no clue that there is a new frequency that was activated and it's never been sent out before. And the second thing is you have to learn. It's like a new radio station. Then you have to know what is the frequency that this particular radio station is sending on, and for that you'll have to see when the wave goes up and when the wave goes down, and be aware of the peaks and the valleys. And so that particular event on May 24th was a part of creating that awareness. And it doesn't end with that; it continues in different kind of ways. And I personally think it's absolutely crucial for the future of humanity, because what these 9 waves of the Mayan calendar describe is really what the destiny of humanity is all about, and we can't manifest the destiny of humanity without following the 9 waves that are there in order to create this universe. So that's what May 24th was about.
Thank you very much. Switching gears for a moment, about the way the Mayans believed in rituals and death and all that. One interesting thing about the Mayan sports that's debated, that game that the Mayans played on a court, where they would have to hit a ball through a little hoop, a little ring, and it was said that there's a debate here. Most people think that the losing team was the one sacrificed, but some no. The Mayans believe that the winners had to be the ones sacrificed because the winners were worthy enough because they won the game. Therefore, they're the ones that are worthy enough to be sacrificed to the gods. And they say, well, why would they want to win the game if they knew they were going to be killed? Well, maybe because the Mayans believe that it was an honor to be killed in a sacrifice. They had nothing to worry about. They were not fearful of being killed in a sacrifice. So, well, that's the first question. Was it the winning or the losing team? And second of all, it's been said that ball going through the hoop is symbolic of the sun moving through the center of the galaxy in the way that it did on the December 21st, 2012 winter solstice, when the December solstice sun rose up in the dark rift, the center of the galaxy. So, okay, that's the second part of the question. So, is the winning team or the losing team the sacrifice, and is that symbolic of the sun moving through the center of the galaxy as it did on the winter solstice 2012?
Yeah, well, I've heard about both of these interpretations, and I've seen the bull game enacted in Xcaret, in outside of Playa del Carmen in Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula, and so it's which was quite fascinating to see. It's pretty much real life, except that they don't kill any of the captives or the team, and I really have no ability to have an opinion on whether it was the losing or the winning team. There is the famous case, though, of the king 18 Rabbit from Copan, which is in present-day Honduras, who was decapitated, and this is historic fact. And was it? And I think his team was playing Quirigua, which is in present-day Guatemala. Now, who won the game? I don't know. I mean, I'm not the right person to ask about that. And I've heard about this discussion. It's been going on for a long time. But I think that, the best lead would probably be to look at what the fate of 18 rabbits, because that's sort of historical reality. And when it comes to this this thing with the sun going through the galaxy, we come to I don't believe that's the case, but it's what happens with these things is really that we tend to believe, we tend to interpret symbols and myths like that in accordance to the kind of worldview we have, or the kind of views that we entertain ourselves. So some people that believe that December 21, 2012 was somehow related to the center of the galaxy, they will believe that the ball game was a symbol for that. Other people who believe that the end of the Mayan calendar really had to do with Bolon Yokteku, the 9 levels of creation, they will, like myself, they will interpret it quite differently, and and we'll never get the answers completely satisfactory, so to speak. We'll never for certain get back the answers from the ancients. What we can do, however, is to look at the big picture and see where is the evidence for, and what kind of correlates are found between these kind of things going on in the skies or things like that, and what actually happened on our planet. And I think that that's what I would like all the time to come back to. And the reason that Ian got fascinated with my work initially was the fact that he saw that here's some basis for things. It's not just making calculations out in the blue or talking about the skies and the stars and so forth. It's actually correlating the shifting ages of the Mayan calendar with what we know happens on our planet. And there's been a large amount of things that actually have been verified in the course of this time that I have predicted, and that then later have been corroborated by modern science. But when it comes to what the ancient Maya really meant, we'll never know for sure. But when it comes to Bolon Yokteku, then there's a fairly good consensus among the Mayanists, and I'm talking about the traditional Mayanists, the epigraphers who are reading the text, that it's about the appearance of the 9-level divinity in its full regalia. That's what they say. But then, of course, some people will say, "Oh, that's not about the 9 waves." Well, if it's not, how come it's correlated to a shift point in the calendar? So the only reason it would be correlated to a shift point in the calendar is then that the Bolon Yokteku and the 9 levels actually are a description of the shifting creativity of the universe based on the phases of these different waves, the 9 waves.
Thank you. And since you mentioned talking about the stars and how it relates to what's on Earth, I want to talk a couple things about that. First of all, there was another galactic alignment of sorts that was said to have been very significant in this time period, and I want to get your take on it. Nostradamus, in the History Channel did a documentary, The Lost Book of Nostradamus, talking about how in a lost book that was that seemed to have some correlations to what Nostradamus did, even though he may not have been the one who drew it. It was pertaining to his work. It seemed that it was pointing to a galactic alignment that does not involve planets, but instead involves crosses. And Vincent Bridges was the guy who, the Nostradamus scholar who talked about this. He tried to explain the cross like this. In the sky, there's a great cross that does not move. It is the cross of the celestial equator and the Milky Way galaxy. And here on the ground, there is the mundane cross, which is formed by the angles between equinoxes and solstices. Like imagine the Earth viewed from space, and imagine if you were to draw a line from like the Earth as it's tilted, where the point where the fall equinox would be, draw that to the point where the spring equinox would be. In the same time period, and then on the solstices, you would draw a line from where the summer solstice would be relative to where the winter equinox would be. It's hard to explain, but he does in the program. They do actually show a picture of this, like the Earth seen from space. Here's what it would look like, and a great cross. These are two crosses. There's these crosses meet each other once every 13,000 years, and the mundane cross and the celestial cross meet every 13,000 years. And when I spoke to what was his name? His name is on the tip of my tongue. Jay Widener. Jay Widener, who's knows Vincent Bridges pretty well, and he wrote the book Monument to the End of Time with Vincent Bridges. I asked him about that great cross. He said that great cross happened sometime in 2002. And it's interesting how in 2002, well, what was going on planet Earth? Well, 9/11 had just happened not that long ago, and this was before the 9/11 truth movement had become very prominent, and planet Earth was pretty much in a state of fear and chaos, and it was like, we got to go to war. Either you're with us or you're with the terrorists, and everybody on planet Earth was acting like sheeple and going along to get along, except for a few conspiracy theorists and truthers who realized what was going on. And it's interesting how in the Lost Book of Nostradamus, at around the same time as, like, there's a spoked wheel in the top of the book showing like 8 crosses, just like this great cross that happens every 13,000 years. And then there's a picture of a crazed loony man holding a book where the pages in the book are blank. And Jay Widener in the documentary, he said this old man, be it maybe representing Nostradamus or some seer, is basically trying to tell us, well, the pages are blank because you have to write the pages, and I'm giving you a choice. You decide how things are going to go. You, humanity, you better get your act together. And it kind of would have made sense that this would be happening around 2002 because humanity was in a sense of fear and chaos. So you could imagine if Nostradamus saw that happening, he would basically be saying, okay, humanity, get your act together, wake up, you're all acting stupid and everything, you're falling for a big lie, now it's time to get your act together and all. So have you by any chance looked into this great cross that I'm talking about, and does all this stuff that Jay Widener has talked about at Vincent Bridges too with the Lost Book of Nostradamus, does this ring a bell to you in any way?
Well, it does ring a bell, but I haven't gone deeply enough to really have an opinion on it. I guess that's all I can say. I don't have the expertise to comment on it.
Well, that's fair enough. How about the idea that it's not an accident that there is a star in the Pleiades star cluster called Maya? Why is it called that? Well, because that's the birthplace of the Mayan civilization's consciousness. That's why. I mean, they say humans are genetic royalty. Yep. We are the genetic royalty of multiple extraterrestrial races out there in the cosmos, and the Mayan civilization had the genes of the aliens, if you will, that came. Their consciousness came from the Maya star in the Pleiades. Have you heard anything about that? Any comments?
Well, yeah. I mean, it is a significant part of the Mayan mythology. The Pleiades. Traditionally, it was in ancient times. they were looked upon as the 7 seeds that was planted by the first father, and they were planted on Earth. And that by itself tells us that already in ancient times the Pleiades played a significant role as a seeding place, you might say. And how that works, I don't really know, but the Pleiades are tremendously important in mythologically speaking in a large number of traditional societies, and Maya were no exception. And it's not an accident that one of the visible ones. I think there are 11 of them that are actually visible, but we're talking about at least hundreds of different stars that are formed in that what they call like a cradle of stars, so there seems to be something there. It's something a lot of people also experience, that kind of a connection with the Pleiades, and so did the Maya.
Well, I do too. Someone I had on my show told me that a lot of my genetics has a lot to do with the Pleiades. Some people say I look like a bit like a Nordic alien with my blonde hair and blue eyes, but that's another story. I'm not going to get into that. Okay, getting back to some serious stuff about the interview. Wanted to ask about. You don't really seem to get into the whole idea of extraterrestrials too much, but just for the hell of it, I got to ask you, Kukulkan, also Quetzalcoatl, they called him. People like Eric von Daniken would assert that he was an extraterrestrial who taught the Mayans or the Aztecs, depending on what civilization you're talking about, in various disciplines. However, some people, like maybe people who follow the work of David Icke, would assert that it's all mythology, like there really was no entity called Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl that was real. They would assert like all the religions were created as a brainwashing tool, and such was the case of the religions of the Mayans and the Aztecs and all the Central American civilizations. The religions were created to suppress their consciousness and brainwash them, and Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, whatever, was a fake mythological figure who was made to represent the dare I say it, malevolent reptilian aliens who control humanity, as all the David Icke supporters would say. Two different schools of thought here, whether he was a real flesh and blood ET or whether he was a fake religious figure that was conjured up by the powers that be centuries ago to suppress consciousness. Are you in any specific camp in that regard, or do you really not look into this at all, don't really care to debate this?
It's a significant part of my book, and I disagree with both of those. I mean, Quetzalcoatl is the Aztec word for the same entity that the Maya called Kukulkan or Gugumat. Quetzalcoatl, Coatl in Aztec language means serpent, and Quetzal, it's a bird, the bird that still exists in the jungles down in southern Mexico. So it's a plumed serpent. That's really what it means. And this plumed serpent, you find it all over the Mesoamerican cultural region. And I've seen, for instance, this amazing time at Chichen Itza when the plumed serpent actually descends into the earth through, there are shadows being created on the staircase, and these shadows are moving, creating 7 peaks and 6 valleys of light. And so this is the symbol of light among the Maya. So it comes, and what do we know about this entity? Well, certainly not an extraterrestrial, because if you go to Popol Vuh, the first, what was usually called the Bible of the Maya. The Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, is looked upon as the highest of all the gods. When creation is going to begin, which you might say 16.4 billion years ago, the other deities involved in creation, they actually go to the plumed serpent and ask it, how are we going to do this? That's what Popol Vuh says about this. And it's also what we all know is that it was looked upon as the bringer of civilization. So when the plumed serpent would come, then the civilizations would flourish. When the plumed serpent would disappear or molt its skin, then the civilizations would disappear or go down. And so this is really so what I'm saying then in my book is that the plumed serpent is a metaphor for the waves of creation. That's much more fitting to the actual stories that the ancient Mayans and Aztecs and all the peoples in ancient Mexico made about they didn't talk about a person. There were persons that were manifestations of the plumed serpents, like Seacatl Tzopiltin in Tula. But then that was only important because that particular person was downloading the wave, and meaning that it was a person that would be a bringer of civilization. And so when you think about it, if you're a person living in nature and you want to create some kind of a symbol of a moving wave, well, the only thing really that comes to mind that would fit that kind of a purpose would be a serpent or a snake. The snakes do move like a sine wave, and so what these people experienced, that it's not only the Maya. I mean, you have the same thing in the Aborigines in Australia. It's the Rainbow Serpent, which is the creator god. If you go to the Amazonas, the people there said that its great anaconda has created the human beings. If you go to the Bushmen in South Africa, then it's a giant python that has created this universe. So what happened was that these people experienced wave lives like movements in reality. And these were actually then waves in the quantum field, not on the manifest level, but in the quantum field. They were tuned into these waves in the same way that I hope people now will be able to tune into the ninth wave, because the life of the planet depends on that. And but it's a serpent symbolizing a wave, and but it seems most people are missing this because they have too materialist views about the Mayan calendar. They don't realize that this is really about waves in the quantum field, in the field that underlies the material reality, and that's really why these waves are playing such a great role in creating civilizations. And when the ancients then were saying that the plumed serpent Quetzalcoatl was the bringer of civilization, they were absolutely right. I mean, go to my website and see how the civilizations of humanity the peaks are actually coming, the civilizations are actually coming with the peaks in the wave, especially in the sixth wave, but you find the same thing with the seventh wave and the higher waves as well. It's a way of symbolizing a waveform that's absolutely instrumental for creating our reality.
Yes, and talking about quantum, the quantum field and quantum work, recently, I think it was the Chinese that did an experiment where they actually were able to teleport a microscopic particle from down from Earth to some spacecraft above the atmosphere. And they assert, well, how were they able to do this? Well, quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance. More and more scientists in the present day are starting to believe that the reason quantum entanglement, where two microscopic particles, no matter how far apart they're separated, what you do to one, the other one will instantly mimic, and that shows that information travels faster than light. It travels instantaneously, and many believe the reason that works is because space and time are illusions. Well, if that's the case, then if space and time are illusions, then why can't we access any bit of information that we want to? Well, some people can, like that Akashic Records I mentioned earlier, Andrew Bartzis. He allegedly can answer almost any question under the sun by accessing the field of information that we know as the Akashic Records. The Ancient Aliens actually did an episode about that about a week or two ago, one of their new episodes. And the idea that like synchronicity, why does the phenomenon known as synchronicity happen? Some say, well, actually there's no such thing as a coincidence. The word coincidence was created by the powers that be as a way of keeping us in the dark about the fact that synchronicity is for real. Why does synchronicity work? Well, I'm going to hypothesize that the science behind how quantum entanglement works, spooky action at a distance, can also be used to explain how synchronicities are possible. I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that, but another question that asks is, okay, well, if we can teleport a microscopic particle the way the Chinese, I believe it was, did a few weeks ago from down to Earth to a spacecraft above the atmosphere, what do we have to do in order to be able to do that at like a whole entire human body, which is millions upon trillions of microscopic particles into one? Well, many would assert the simple answer is raise your consciousness. Well, that's easier said than done. I mean, we're living in a very, very dense reality. I mean, we're living in a matrix, for crying out loud, a system of domination and control. It still is. I'm sorry to say, but that's the reality. I mean, it's breaking apart and all, and we're getting more and more free every day. But the fact that it is still a domination control matrix is what keeps us from being able to do these teleportation and other Akashic Records access and things, which, well, some people have the ability to do it, but everybody can, but it's easier said than done for everybody. What can we do? How do we expand our consciousness? I know it's a hard question to ask, but hey, it makes for great radio conversation, so I'd like to give you your take on maybe helping people find the answers to these great mysteries. Any ideas?
Well, I believe it's probably more difficult to teleport a whole human being than just a single proton or whatever it was. But yeah, they are starting to do these kind of experiments where things are teleported, and it doesn't quite make sense from a mechanistic, old-fashioned mechanistic standpoint. And let me see. Well, I prefer to talk about the issue of synchronicities, and the reason that I believe that synchronicities are possible, especially between human beings, is that we are in resonance with these waves that are creating our minds. And, if two people are in resonance with the same wave, and that wave has a direction, as I talked about the plumed serpent, the wave has a direction. It means it's going somewhere, and the two persons however, they have their individual stories. They're not identical, and so the reason I think then that synchronicities appear is that they are in resonance with the same wave. Once you are in resonance with the same wave, synchronicities will start to appear, and these synchronicities usually have some kind of a message, you might say, or at least we interpret it as being a message. And that message is then also usually about the future. And so it all makes sense. If the waves have a direction, like the plumed serpent is going somewhere, then people, any group of people that are in resonance with the same wave, they will not only start to think in similar ways, they will also, all kinds of mysterious things, seemingly mysterious. It's only mysterious if you're completely looking at the physical material view of reality. If you're looking at the quantum level, where there are invisible waves operating, creating these directions, then it's no mystery anymore. It's just exactly what you would expect. So that's I guess what I would like to answer to this. And who knows if at some point the whole body can be teleported, but I don't know anything about it really.
Since I mentioned that, there is that whole lot of theories about how there were a couple of Mayan cities and all where it appears that the Mayans just vanished. Like they left behind, like they were in the middle of doing all their household chores one day and everything, and then they instantly vanished. So how did that happen? Some say extraterrestrials took them off world. Others say that they, at that moment, as a specific civilization on Earth, they entered some high state of consciousness which allowed them to literally ascend into a higher level in a manner that, well, we only wish we could do in our time. That would be lovely, but we're not quite there yet. Others think, well, we don't know, and we'll never know. Well, I'm sure Akashic Records readers could know, but I don't have an Akashic Records here right now to ask. So since we're on the subject of humans possibly teleporting, what have you heard about theories regarding how the Mayans vanished one day and disappeared?
Well, to me, I've been there a lot in the region, and just a couple of weeks ago, I met a couple of Mayan elders in France, and these people are descendants of the people that once lived there and that once created the advanced calendrical system that is now becoming increasingly known to the world. And so I'm not looking for an explanation of how they disappeared, because they're still there. And there are millions of people in Guatemala that do not even speak Spanish. They speak Mayan languages. And so this is not something I wonder about. The way I look upon it is that the old culture, the old civilization went down. It went down at the shift between the sixth day and the sixth night, 1224 AD. And at that time, a significant amount of Native American civilizations went down, and the reason is that the plumed serpent disappeared at the quantum level. And but that didn't mean that the people disappeared. And it just means that the kind of high culture, high civilization that they've had, building pyramids and advanced calendrical systems and so forth, that no longer was honored in the same way as previously.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about. We got about 11 minutes left, so let's end on talking about what's in store for the present day and the future. Um, right now, we are at a very significant time. Some are asserting in regards to some changes that are going to be happening on Earth. We just had a new moon in Leo this past Sunday, and we're about to have on August 7th, I believe it is. There's going to be a partial lunar eclipse. And then on the 21st, and this is very significant to me because I'm actually going down to Charleston, where my brother and his son, who was born about 9 months ago, made me an uncle. I'm going to get to see them too, but I'm also going to be seeing the solar eclipse that's going to be happening that day. It's interesting
Hmm.
how this solar eclipse, it's going to be visible all across America. And the path is basically going from northwest America down in a southeast direction, and Charleston, South Carolina, will be the last place to see it. And hopefully, it will not be a cloudy day when I go there. I'm sure if the gods are with us, they're going to make sure that it won't be cloudy and we'll be able to see it. Interestingly, though, it's been said that around a week before that eclipse, and this isn't me talking, this is Brad Johnson, who channels the higher dimensional entity Adronis. He did a video yesterday talking about how the sun, it's going to have some very significant activity going on. The sun is like September 15th up until the time of the eclipse, and the climax will be that the eclipse on the 21st. And we're right now in a Pluto and Capricorn time period where, astrologically speaking, what does that mean? Well, last time we had Pluto and Capricorn was the American Revolution, so we're basically going through another American Revolution, and one of the significances of it is we're going to see the destruction of things that do not stand in humanity's best interest. And it's interesting how on April 8th, 2024, which just so happens to be my youngest brother's 30th birthday, it will be, there's going to be another solar eclipse that's going to be going across America, although this one is going to be going from the southwest United States going up into a northeast direction, kind of like the opposite path of what the one that we're going to be seeing next month is going. And that's going to be happening around like the end of the Pluto and Capricorn astrological period, when we will see the end of everything that does not stand in humanity's best interest. Now, this kind of makes me wonder that this eclipse that we're going to be seeing now, the whole time period from now up until the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, this will be the hot spot time period, if you will, when we will see the destruction of the Roman Empire of the modern era, which is the United States Corporation masquerading as the American government, which, yeah, it is the Roman Empire of the modern era, land of the free, home of the brave, my fat ass. So, do you think there is some truth to what I've just said here, and how does that tie in with your work regarding cycles of time and consciousness?
Yeah. Well, I on my blog, on my website, calleman.com, I have several articles about the decline of the West, and this I talked about for a very long time. And we saw the beginning of this last year with the Brexit and the election of Trump in the United States, which was really it's really sort of there are, as I point out there are much deeper reasons to expect that the West will no longer dominate the world. And this has happened essentially through the British Empire and through the American Empire, the Roman Empire of the current day. And I think both the election of Trump and the election of in the Brexit election is enhancing this downfall of these powers. And this is a long-term process. It doesn't have to happen immediately, but it will happen over a long time, so that the world will increasingly become more balanced between East and West in terms of power. But I also tend to think that in these more immediate. Nobody. The political situation in the United States is so what shall I say? So flexible or so unstable is probably a better word to say, that anything can happen, and it has to do with what waves people are developing resonance with. If people are still developing resonance with the sixth wave, then there won't be. Then times will be very, very difficult in the times ahead, and it would be quite reasonable to expect that the months of August and I would say the end of September really will be might bring very, very ominous events in that regard. But the future of the world is really about the ninth wave. And who knows? That's really the guiding. How many people will let themselves be guided by this wave? That's really the question to see, because that's a wave that looks that transcends nationalities, that creates a new global unity that's not based on anybody's dominance or any corporations, but yet it's a global phenomenon, and that's the destiny of humanity. Now, if it will happen or not, who knows? But I do think especially the United States is facing a very difficult time, difficult choices. Nobody can really say how it will get out of this particular political situation that's there. But obviously, if there is a downfall of the United States, then the rest of the world will not be immune, so to speak. It will really be very much affected as well. But I think it's important to know that these are long-term processes. They are based on waves that exist in the quantum field, and which all human beings potentially are in resonance with. And it really does compel us, I would say, to study the 9 waves of creation in order to understand what drives the universe, what drives the evolution of our own planet, and then based on that make the decisions to create resonance with the waves that seems to hold the most promise for the humanity, and especially the one that I say develops the destiny of humanity, which is the 9th wave. And when it comes to there are in these months ahead there are peculiar things going on that seem to corroborate the 9 waves. The eclipse, the solar eclipse that you're talking about, it happens. It coincides with a shift into a night in the 9th wave, so really, what most immediately will be the effect of that, whether people know it or not, will be actually then the effect of the 9th wave turning into a night at that point. But then comes this time in the end of September 23rd, when it's only the 9th wave that will be bringing light, and it's they're momentous. These are momentous times but especially in those in the western part of the world that we're living in, and the nations that sort of created that kind of Western power, it won't hold up. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I may have misspoke there. I said, yeah, the eclipses, there's the August 7th partial lunar eclipse, August 21st total solar eclipse that'll be visible across the United States and Charleston. And then I said, Brad Johnson, Adronis, said that'll on September 15th to the fall equinox in 23rd. That will see a very, very big rise in solar activity, which will coincide with a great amount of consciousness rising on planet Earth, which will greatly speed up the rise into fourth density. A lot of people wondering, what is the event? There's the event is coming to the YouTube channel. Well, in that video, Brad Johnson said the event is the rise of Earth into fourth density consciousness, and he asserted that the fall equinox and the week before then will be, when the solar activity increases, will be a great time period where that will happen. And these eclipses that are going to be happening in August, they're just the tip of the iceberg, the starting point in regards to a great big huge run that we're going to see, which may climax, like I said, with that solar eclipse that's supposed to happen April 8th, 2024, which is going to move in like the opposite way across America as the one that happens this next month in August will. The one this next month will be going northwest to southeast. The one in April 8th, 2024 will be going from southwest in a northeast direction across the United States, and I don't think that's an accident. So make of that whatever you will. Just wanted to clear that up. So, well, it's 8 o'clock now. I guess I'll bring the show to an end. I think we covered a lot of fascinating things. I sure learned a few things. I hope you learned a few things. It was great having you on, and maybe it was a little blessing that we missed that last interview that you scheduled, because in that time that we had up until this one, I had a few things to research and look into to prepare for this. And, well, everything happens for a reason, and I'm sure that happened for a good reason too. So in the end, you should be glad we got this on this day, and I promise to upload this to YouTube hopefully by tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow at the latest, and I'll spread it far and wide. And I wish you the best of luck on whatever the future holds for you, Dr. Calleman. Long live Yenzel Lungold and everyone else who's well, not long live, may he rest in peace, and everyone else who carries on your legacy, may they long live. And best of luck to you. Enjoy the rest of your trek through infinite consciousness.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed this. You brought up a lot of topics that I haven't really dealt with before, and so that's always interesting. And you have a tremendous scope of knowledge of a lot of things, and I appreciated that.
I appreciate you coming on. Take care now. Namaste, my friend. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.